Hello, and welcome to the Lorelock. Today we're going to be covering our first forced research topic, the Backrooms. Today we're going to be covering the Backrooms, and we're going to be more specifically covering the Kane Pixels era of the Backrooms. On May 12, 2019, an anonymous user started a thread on the exports of 4chan's paranormal theme board, asking users to post, quote, disquieting images that just feel off, unquote. One of the posts was the original photo of the Backrooms, a picture of a large carpeted open room with yellow wallpaper and fluorescent lighting on a Dutch angle. Subsequently, this is what became the Backrooms. The description for it came a little bit later in the form of a first user reply. The description as we know it is famously written as, if you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the Backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell heard you. Anonymous 4chan user, May 13th, 2019. Now, the Backrooms are one of the internet aesthetics' best examples of what liminal spacing is. Liminal spaces are empty or abandoned places that normally have higher traffic. Sometimes the word liminal is used to describe things that are in between. A great example would be a massive empty hallway, large office buildings that are completely unoccupied but are fully furnished, or one of the best examples, in my opinion, are like dead malls. So you see like a large mall where it should have busy and rife with traffic, however there's nothing going on, but it just gives you that creepy, eerie feeling. And the reason why liminal horror works so well is because of that anxiety and that feeling of isolation that it invokes. Now, liminal horror is seen in a lot of modern media. It can be seen in movies such as Stephen King's The Shining, it can be seen in The Blair Witch Project, and it can be seen in more recently and more divisively in the movie Skinamarink. And that's one of the things that Kane does so well with the Backrooms series. He really masters and captures those feelings of anxiety and dread. He makes you ask questions like, what's beyond the next corner? What is going to happen? What am I going to see? And most importantly, how are we going to escape? And those are questions we're actually going to answer right now, or at least attempt to. So, without further ado, we're going to jump into Kane Pixels, The Backrooms, starting with Episode 1, Found Footage.
Sound, camera, rolling. All right, and action.
In 1991, armed with a small film crew, a cameraman presumably named Kane was filming a short film on a side street. After finishing a successful take, the director decided that they should get a wide-angle shot to finish the day. Kane backed away to get this shot when suddenly trips backwards. When he comes to, he looks up and is in a large, yellow, wide expanse. We will soon learn that this is called the Backrooms. Upon regaining consciousness, Kane grabbed his camera and could be heard yelling, asking if anyone else was there. He then began exploring the Backrooms, walking around the labyrinth of hallways before him. Soon he heard something in the distance behind him. While holding his camera, Kane quickly swiveled around to reveal something just peeking its head around the corner before disappearing. Kane asked if anyone was there. No answer.
Hello? Is someone there?
Something I also want to point out here is I didn't even notice this until like my second or third watch through, but when he does turn around that initial time, there is a little something peeking its head out. So I just want to give you a quick slow down and we'll take a look at it right here.
Hello?
Now it could be something like it's peeking its head over just to take a look, or it even sometimes kind of looks like it's waving, or it could just be like a tail running away. Either way, in my opinion, it kind of feels like when like something is checking on something new in their territory to see if they're prey or not. And let's be real, Kane is definitely not alone. Kane brushed this off and continued onwards. He then comes across a small gap in the hallway. Peering his camera through, it reveals a nearly endless hallway, identical to the one he was just previously in. Kane walks into a large open room, footage showing a ladder going into a wall. With nowhere to go but forward, Kane climbs the ladder and heads through the hole. It seems almost like as he's moving forward, it's getting darker and darker, almost like he's delving deeper into a cave or the belly of a beast. Now, it seems more like it's just unfinished space at this time. So we're just gonna see like further and further. It just feels like it's getting darker. He went through the hole, and now it's, instead of having that bright blinding halogen and the heavy buzz of the lights, now there's just shadows and occasional lights. Isolated and alone, Kane does the only thing that he can and moves forward.
Can anybody hear me? Hello?
In the distance, Kane finds something written on the walls. He moves closer and sees that they're painted arrows, possibly indicating someone has been there. They're pointing to a drawing of some sorts, of a sun, pair of eyes, and a window. And on that window saying something like, "Do not move, stay still."
What the hell?
One of the things too I also kind of want to point out on this one is I'm not sure what like the face is. I'm not sure what that face drawing is for. These are all literally just theories of mine. It's been a long time since I've seen this. But I also want to point out too that there are several handprints on that wall, most likely in blood. I'm colorblind, but that definitely looks pretty red again to me. Anyway, now this next part, no matter how many times I've seen it, still gives me goosebumps. The absolute terror in this audio, well, you see for yourself. Also, headphone warning, just letting you know. Kane is simply running for his life at this point. He doesn't even know where he's going. It's been an endless maze for him so far, so he doesn't know even where he's going. He just knows that he's running. And at this point, survival instinct just kicks in. As horrifying as it is, this creature, we really don't know a whole lot about it yet. I've seen both in an interview with Kane and on other research articles, he's been called both a life form and an entity. So, like I said, we don't know a whole lot yet. There is some extra that we will find out later, but again, yet. Kane eventually finds a large room with a hole going down to what seems like another level. With the entity closing in, he takes the only option he has and jumps. I also want to point out by now that I would have died, just so you know. Like, I saw that thing coming at me, I would probably peel my own skin off. Just game over, man. Kane's now in some kind of lower level. It's significantly darker down here, and the architecture is definitely changing. He sees on the wall what looks to be like the exit to like a regular family basement. Kane climbs the stairs and flickers the lights on and off. It's unclear if the lights are doing that themselves or Kane is just messing around with it. However, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility of the lights doing it themselves in the back rooms. Our cameraman now finds himself in what seems to be kind of a large office building. The building seems to have changed from floors from trading in their gross yellow and humming lights to a drab and cement gray. So when he looks outside of that courtyard, my first thought was that it looks like a parody of what people would, what some like AI or some alternate intelligence would assume it was something that people would use, like a child with building blocks would assume this is business, we do businessman things, something like that. One theory I've always had about the Backrooms, and I'm not sure if I'm even remotely close into the realm of possibilities on this one, is in video games when you have like assets that are sitting off screen, usually they're in some kind of back room. What if like these back rooms were like the loading areas or the staging areas for reality? So random tangent. Let's see what Kane's up to. We now see Kane coming up to what looks like a gorge between the two buildings. This kind of goes back to my original theory of how it feels like something made these areas like kind of with like the thought of looking normal to humans, not actually understanding their purpose. So they built these, but instead of intending to have like a walkway or some kind of skyway in between them, they instead just left them as is, not knowing the purpose. Which, again, these random pieces leads me to believe that it's either used as like some kind of like storage to no clip into reality, or it's used as, like I said, like some kind of like random AI or random thing built to mimic humans. Approaching a fire exit, he starts to head his way through, assuming, like always, finally an exit, we're gonna get out of here. He climbs the stairs full of hope until he pans that door open and sees the familiar yellow walls.
You gotta be kidding me.
The hum is almost insulting at this point. He's gone in a full loop right now, and escape is looking less and less likely. Kane runs and hides, and while he's hiding, we get our first actual good look at the entity. We finally see what the entity looks like. This is our best look, when Kane is not running for his life. He gets this glimpse of it, this otherworldly being that has proportions that are not natural. The geometry of it doesn't make any sense, and how it stays up is just beyond comprehension. So, looking at this monster doesn't make any sense. It's enough to drive somebody mad. And with that, it appears that Kane has met the monster. Kane drops the camera about halfway through the attack and falls down the ramp. No clipping back into reality. At least, the camera made it back to the Earth. And that ends found footage. Now, that was a lot. So, we are first introduced to the Backrooms here through just a random person clipping through who just happened to be holding a camera at the time. The Backrooms appear to be a world that is an amalgamation of random geometry and shapes that seems to go on forever. It also appears to be inhabited by several hostile creatures, one of course being the entity, which we'll possibly learn a little bit more about later. Something I also want to point out about the Backrooms too is Kane, not the cameraman, Kane Pixels, artist, the guy who made the series, is a genius. All of these are digital assets, and it blows my mind. I want to physically buy this man a drink. The amount of work that he does is shocking. I'm an asshole sitting here in front of a microphone. I'm not really doing anything. He is literally physically building these assets. I know in one interview I heard from him, he was saying that his family at one point actually asked him, where are you getting the money to buy all these, to buy or rent all these office spaces? And it's just funny because, like I said, he's rendering them, and his family thinks that he's out there, renovating abandoned malls. But no, like I said, we learned a lot about this one. And on top of that, there's also, under this, there is a unlisted videos. We see here that it shows that the found footage was found in 1996. Now, if we remember correctly, the footage itself was taken in 91. It's believed that the camera didn't make it back to Earth in that time that Kane was in there until 96. We see in the description a file called mar90archive.tar compiled in 91. In this video, it starts as a generic booting sequence. It starts by reformatting and then loads our archive.tar video. Once it loads, we can see that it's showing an image that looks very familiar. We then get a short beat of what looks to be a blueprint for a computer, then followed by a room slowly filling with water. Then shown what appears to be either a scientist or some kind of worker at a large, looks like a typewriter. Their face currently is censored, and it is unknown what corporation they are with. We're soon followed by another, what looks to either be a scientist or electrician, working on some kind of equipment. Now we see a big room full of big machines. Now, we don't have any inkling what these machines are as of yet, but trust me, they will be coming up later. And now we see something familiar. There is a man, also with a censored face, staring at a window with his computer, and what appears to be a very familiar sight. What appears to be the back rooms, similar to the one that our friend the cameraman was stuck in. And now we come across one of the more interesting pieces. We get a blurry image of something stating null zone. There is also some blurred imaging, blurred text in the corner, however we can't read it this time. Thanks to the Kane Pixels backroom Reddit, we do actually have a high quality image of this. Now it reads null zone 4, and with that area squared off, and the formerly blurred text now reads, due to the elevation discrepancy between panels 225 and 234, a small kx field is created. Now a kx field in mathematics is what's called a polynomial ring. How that applies here is unknown, but I'm most certain that it has something to do with the next following graphic. Our final graphic that we get here in the .tar file is, it looks like either a passageway or some kind of large conductor. This is not explained on, but that is really all we're going to get here in this video. Now, that's all we really have here for these two, with the .tar file being part of this, along with the found footage. Now, we know that Kane, the cameraman Kane, slipped in around 1991. However, this other file shows 96. In the description it says 96. Now, please note that time discrepancy, because we are going to come back to it later. Now, I'm going to be moving on to our next episode. I'm not going to be doing these in chronological order. I'm going to be doing these in the way they were uploaded so we can view them the way Kane intended. At the end of these, I will probably be doing a timeline so we can actually get a better understanding, but in the meantime, we're going to go over these as they were released, which takes us to our next episode, the third test. Also, I put subtitles on in the next one because it is extremely difficult to understand whatever this AI or distorted person is saying, but I'm also one of those people who always has subtitles on because I'm part deaf, I swear. So, anyway, let's dive into the third test.
On July 2nd, 1988, the ASIN Research Facility tested its low-proximity magnetic distortion system for the third time. Details regarding the results of the experimentation have not yet been released. During a press conference held in April of 1988, Ivan Beck-Weiss, director of the ASIN Foundation, described the intention of these tests, stating this program was granted sufficient backing from the United States government will offer a solution to all current and future storage and residential needs and save billions of dollars on property construction and management.
We now know the name of the corporation that was studying the backrooms from the .tar videos. We now have the name Async, and they are going to be one of our key players going forward. As you can see, what Async was trying to do was they were trying to create or access these backrooms as like an infinite storage. One of their ideas, as was alluded to in the subtitles, was they wanted to possibly sell this to the United States government for like storage and residential. I'm sure the government can be trusted with an infinite space and a pocket dimension. Yeah, what can go wrong? Yeah, poor people can have a little banishment to a pocket dimension as a treat. I mean, if I'm not going to be on a CIA watch list, what's the point of being a YouTuber? We then see them initiating this final test. So this third test, as we can see with the bright lights, so far it looks like what's happening is Async accidentally created this doorway, because if you look, it is dated 1988. This is prior to the no clipping incident that was recorded from Kane. So as far as we know, that is the only incident, and possibly that this is the precursor. This is the proverbial opening of the gateway that started everything. So I don't believe that they created the backrooms. I think they found the backrooms and they opened a door. A lot of this is, from my understanding, from what I've seen, is a lot of this is like a good example of man's hubris, kind of like flying too close to the sun, Tower of Babel situation, where we keep poking the unknown and then the unknown pokes back. And sometimes that unknown is a giant silly string creature. One last thing I also want to point out before we go into our next episode, First Contact, is that according to them, the press conference, according to them in this third test episode, is that in April of 1988 is when the press conference took place, but the actual test to prove that it's actually a viable thing was in July of 1988. So weird time discrepancy here. I know there's a lot of weird like conspiracy theories of time travel, manipulation, etc. And I'm going to get to some of the weird time shenanigans here in a minute, but I mean, it could also be a case of a corporation jumping the gun to try to make billions of dollars, because that's never happened before.
A few moments later.
We're going to jump over to First Contact here. Dive right in here in First Contact with what appears to be the sixth test. Now, we've seen the third, we don't know what happened with the fourth or fifth. And now we see several spinning machines. Now showing us some large machines. These are most likely the ones that were shown in the Dot Tower video. We're met with a familiar sight, the gateway that we saw in the previous test. It appears that it's been more than a year since the previous test, as this test takes place on October 17th, 1989. We can start to hear the whir of machines and the whir of electricity start to move, as we can tell that something is slightly wrong. The gateway starts to mix and crumble, and now it's just warping and turning into something else. Fires start to break out, and, well, take a look. We see some kind of map forming. It appears to be almost like it's mapping out the back rooms, or at least showing some kind of expansion. The domain of it has reached out, and it looks like the gate is finally opened. It's unsure that if this is the first time that the gate stabilized, but now we see a familiar yellow and hear the familiar hum of the halogen. Now, Async has made first contact. And that was First Contact. So First Contact occurred over their sixth test on October 17th, 1989. So with that one, it looks like that they conducted the test, the gateway opened and created this domain, or found the domain and materialized it into this doorway. Now, this doorway and this event coincides with an unlisted video that is used to be on the account. Kane has taken it down, and I will tell you why in a minute. On October 17th, 1989, at 5:04 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Async opened the portal to the backrooms, which caused the shock in the facility. At the exact same time, an earthquake hit the Santa Cruz Mountain and stretched all the way up past San Francisco to Santa Rosa. Now, while the backrooms opening may be fiction, the actual earthquake is not. Kane actually tried to combine these two events and try to make it so that they were canon. There's a reason why this was originally on here, but then they changed their mind. Kane changed his mind and removed it. He wanted to distance himself from an actual real-life tragedy after he realized that it might be a bungle. So this video is still available if you look for it on YouTube as collateral.mov. However, it is no longer actually part of the Kane Pixel verse, if you will. We now jump into an episode entitled Missing Persons. The episode date in the description is February 3rd, 1990. It now cuts to a graph, an increasing graph of missing persons cases. It seems to start to skyrocket around the time of the first contact, around the first time that Async opened the Backrooms. Now, the reason why this graph is relevant is rather obvious. It's showing a correlation between the time frame that the Backrooms were opened and missing cases started going up. Because remember, Kane fell into the Backrooms around 1991, while the Backrooms themselves were opened around late 89. This, like I said, is being posted around the date of this actual video is closer to early 1990, so we can just start to see the beginning of the fallout of this. So now, all of a sudden, with this gateway or this veil eroded because of Async's machine, we're now starting to see that veil, people slip through that veil. We now cut to a team that is walking through the Backrooms in full hazmat suits. Something I want to point out too is it looks like they are starting to, almost looks like they're mapping the Backrooms. They're leaving kind of a tether as they walk through. They turn the corner and they see some kind of figure in the distance, where there's looks like 3 ducks and a weird black splotch on the wall. They approach what looks like a body leaning up against the wall, covered in some kind of organic matter. Something I also want to point out that I caught right away when they approached this thing, it definitely gives me Annihilation vibes. In Annihilation, there's a part where the rescue team, if you've seen the movie or read the books, there's a scene where they are in like a pool area, an abandoned pool area, and they find something up against the wall that looks like organic material has taken over it, and it's clear that that used to be a human. Now, this also is very obvious that this is a corpse, used to be human, but now there's some kind of like organic matter growing all over it. I also want to point out too that if you look at it and you look at the very beginning of Missing Persons, one of the people is no longer missing. This is very obviously Nicholas Bolton. The camera stops for a second with a backwards text stating, "If anybody, blame him." It's not known who him is yet, but we're going to keep watching and try to see if we can figure that out.
Subject is male, somewhere between 18 and 21 years old.
We cut to a lab of some kind where the audio and the subtitles state that an autopsy is being undergone. The Async logo is visible, and we see the body of the recovered Nicholas. From here he states that the cause of death was most likely malnutrition, as if he did no clip in, there's a high chance that he was there for quite some time. The doctor then says that the body had an unnatural decaying process where some parts of the body stopped decomposing while some stayed intact while others didn't decay. The doctor had taken samples from what he first thought was an aggregated collection of Pseudomonas fluorescens, but turned out to be a mutated strain of a simple Hay basilicus, bacteria that should be completely benign. Our next video is entitled Motion Detected. From here we see the members of Async setting up what could only be described as a staging area inside of the complex. From here they set several cameras up to see if they could catch any motion or noise when they are not around. We see the first motion detected where it's just several researchers just passing by. Nothing of note in this one. Again with this one, it seems that researchers set this one off as well. With this one it shows a noise being recorded, and it's just simply the threshold being closed. Nothing of note. This one proves to be a little different as it is a noise that is detected of a monstrous guttural noise. From here we see what appears to be like two tentacles in the far distance, almost waving. This is a little reminiscent to back when Kane was first in the Backrooms and saw something following him. We now see an enhanced image of this. We now come across an informative video where Async personnel are being briefed with multiple different kinds of variations of the Backrooms and different kinds of terminology that will be used. From here we're going to learn about the project of KB31. From here we're given information on the gateway, henceforth known as the Threshold. The full name for it is the Low Proximity Magnetic Distortion System. From here, they're going to be referring to the Backrooms mostly as the Complex, so just to simplify things, I will be calling it the Complex going forward. We then cut to the date of February 29th, 1990. This is 26 days after the previous video of missing persons. Now, what's interesting about this date is that the year 1990 was not a leap year, so in actuality this date shouldn't exist. It's unknown if this was intentional by Kane or if this was just a goof. Something I've noticed as well is these people in hazmat suits, if you look at the bottom parts, almost looks like they're covered in tar. Now, if you remember when they found Nicholas's body, it was covered in black fungus. Maybe this is a connection to that, maybe it's just showing the slow deterioration of their outfits as they travel the complex.
Guys, can you hear this?
One of the researchers hears a sound and travels down the corridor. As he travels down, he looks, doesn't see anything, and then turns back to return to his group. And suddenly,
Guys, can you
they're
hear
gone.
this?
Not only are they gone, but so is the tether that would return him home.
Open!
Like I stated before, when faced with the entity, I would probably do something similar here and just break down and cry, so. Our missing man travels down a corridor into what almost looks like a large gymnasium. He travels inside and sees what looks like to be some kind of organic matter on the ground. Unsure what it is. I mean, it does kind of look like the organic matter left over by the fungus from Nicholas. However, after investigating, it's determined better that he just moves on. So there's something I do eventually want to cover here, because this is many times I've noticed people coughing. So I'm unsure if this is related at all, but it could be. But I've noticed, because I remember Kane coughed repeatedly. Our previous adventurers I noticed were coughing, and now our new guy is coughing. So now that we know that there is some kind of fungus running around, there's a fungus among us in there, it's possible that there is some kind of issue where the fungus goes into the lungs, especially after seeing what happened to Nicholas. It appears our cameraman looks almost like he's escaped just the general drab of the yellow of the Backrooms and has moved on to some odd wallpapered area with a small house or barn on the inside. It's unknown what these are. It's actually never really explained. It's just some bizarre oddity that is just at home here in the Backrooms. No longer down on the farm, our cameraman finds himself back in the complex. After turning around a few times through the alcoves, he sees something that looks out of place. He sees a wall made of stone that looks like it almost has an emergency exit attached to it. Confused, but out of options, feeling optimistic, he approaches the door. It's been 3 months since the previous incident. We now join through the perspective of a researcher named Marvin Lay. Marvin, along with his colleagues, Mark, George, and Kim, all prepare for an excursion into the complex through the threshold. Marvin and his team approach the threshold to head into the complex. They turn around to see one lone person standing up in like an observation deck. This could be Ivan Beck, the person of authority that was mentioned back in the third test. However, that is never made clear. Entering the complex through the threshold, it appears that ASIC has seemingly made itself at home by creating a small staging area inside the complex. Ultimately, this seems to be the beginning of their main goal and main objective towards making the complex more inhabitable. Of course, many variables and obstacles still exist.
Has the vertical expansion been approved yet?
They're not getting to that until after the presentation.
When does that go?
We rejoin Marvin and his team as they begin their way through the complex.
What day will the tour be
It
open?
appears that they've made quite a bit of headway in mapping this area. There seems to be a large bolted section down on the ground, and here they're going to be adding additional tethers as they make their journey.
Get the cable.
Oh, wow. This is new.
Is that all?
The researchers approached a large, almost checkered area in the ground. Each of these appear to be a large pitfall going in. Beyond this obstacle, there appears to be a door on the opposite side. Looking down, they notice that the pitfalls and the holes are also carpeted.
Pretty quick.
The pitfalls appear to be dark, and there's no sign of how far down they actually go.
Don't recognize the design.
One of the researchers, brave enough, decides to attempt to cross this and try to see what's in another door.
Assembling a walkway would be redundant. Don't we know this is another dead end?
Oh my god.
What do you see?
Everything okay?
Successful, this researcher opens the door and exclaims that Marvin's got to get the camera over here right away. Whatever it is, something important.
Sure, yeah. Oh, okay. Just, one moment, alright?
Gingerly, Marvin tries to make a few steps across the platform. At first, he's successful
I'm going.
until something jumps. It's not clear if Marvin loses his footing or there's like a glitch and he gets pushed in. But for a split second, we are able to see some text. The text reads, "While data could be inferred from these readings, nobody knew what would actually be found on the other side." It's unclear if they're referring to the complex, what's on the other side of the door on the opposite side of the pitfalls, or inside the pitfalls themselves.
I think I pulled something in my shoulder. I'm a bit dizzy, but no, I'm fine.
Marvin falls a good distance. It's unknown how far he actually fell, however, he is definitely separated from his group.
Like a room.
Down here, he notices that everything is much darker. Even the wallpaper is slightly more green, and even just looking around, it's significantly less vibrant. Similar to how, as our original Kane friend who viewed it in 1991, the further he went down, the darker and drearier it became.
Okay, just stand by and stay put for a moment.
Got it.
Is the camera intact?
Seems to be fine. I'm recording, but who knows what the output will be like.
Mark. There, Marv.
What was that?
What is what?
Suddenly, Marvin's attention is grabbed by what sounded like the scream for help.
I didn't hear anything up here.
He whips his head around and tries to investigate. His other team members try to tell him, nope, nobody should be down here. However, it's definitely somebody screaming for help.
A person?
Yeah.
That makes no sense. Are you sure you're not just hearing us?
No, it's definitely not from you.
Again, it appears the further he goes in, the more distorted the geometry becomes. He comes to the end of a wall that almost looks like it was slightly propped up. He puts the camera down and rolls through and sees something that blows his mind. It's like the end of a tunnel and the outside of a sky in a small town. Marvin is instructed to essentially stay here,
Right there. Under the
but
apple.
he then hears the voice calling for help, asking if anyone can hear him. He makes his way in and sees a town rife with foliage, streetlights, houses, everything.
But what if Miller's right about the null zones?
Even if that's the case, I agree with Mark. It's not worth it.
It's here Marvin says something interesting. He says, what if they were right about the null zones? Now, this is not the first time that null zones has been brought up. It was brought up previously in the .tar video, in the video that the Kane Pixels Reddit clarified. It mentioned the null zones. One theory is that the null zones are where people can no-clip in, similar to how Kane got into the Backrooms. Our cameraman makes it to the end of the street, to the only house that has lights on, when he suddenly hears a shout from there. It almost sounds like whatever's making these noises is just making those noises for the sake of making noises. They're not responding to Marvin. They're not responding to his calls. They're only screaming.
Can you hear me? I'm here. Anything?
Marvin enters the house and sees an incredibly bizarre sight. It appears to be a room full of traffic signs that are written backwards.
Odd.
There are inverted turn signs in this room, coming out of the carpet.
They're inverted? What do you...
He now hears the scream of the man, almost loud and clear, like he's just in the next room.
This is Marv?
Marvin makes his way to the basement and sees signs of human life. It appears that people have been staying there. There's a backpack, some bedrolls, a chair,
Someone's been living down here.
and what looks like house numbers. It's unclear what the house numbers are for, but then again, what is clear down here? Marvin again shouts and looks for anyone.
Can you hear me?
And then we are greeted with one of the most hard lines in the entire series.
What is that?
That is not a fucking person!
What do you see?
That is not a fucking person. That is an understatement. It appears that our squiggly friend from found footage has been taking up residency. It's unknown if this thing is luring anything that comes into these null zones, or it could be even just searching for prey. It screams in almost an identical human fashion, like it had been studying people or copying its victims. Marvin returns to where he originally landed in the pitfalls. His team frantically trying to get something ready for him, dropping a rope, anything. The bellow of the beast is getting closer and closer, the human screams almost deafening at this point. Finally, his team ties a suitcase to the rope and drops it down for him to lift up. Marvin catches his breath in the alcove, catches his breath, and coughs. We open presentation with a presentation. This presentation opens with stock footage and animation meant to advertise the low proximity magnetic distortion system, the system that makes traveling to the complex possible.
Countless innovations that have completely reshaped life as we know it. To increase exponentially in the coming decades, we must account for these never-before-faced challenges in ways equally never-before considered. Here at Async, we believe we have found the solution. The low-proximity magnetic distortion system. What is the low-proximity magnetic distortion system? Using 32 will be distributed across all points, allowing for cargo and personnel to seamlessly pass through their designated threshold.
You know these aren't accurate renders when they're not using the disgusting yellow and using a vibrant yellow instead. We cut this time to a different kind of presentation. The tape reads DOE Tape Archive, DOE standing for Department of Energy. The man in the business suit being shown around the observatory is believed to be Secretary of Energy James Watkins. We cut from Mr. Watkins to a proximity alarm of some kind going off. While the Secretary of Energy is in the observation deck, that same alarm begins to blare. And when they turn the camera on, they're shocked to see a man in their own gear standing in the threshold. Through a recorded phone call following afterwards, we learned that this man is named Peter Tench. He was the researcher that entered into the threshold on February 29th, 1990, and it is now upon him returning May 8th, 1990. He had literally vanished for 3 months, but to him, it was only moments. Now, presentation actually has one more presentation to make. Presentaception, if you will. There is an unlisted video on here in the description that takes you to a separate account. This account has one unlisted video of a Simpsons episode from 1991 entitled Bart Gets Hit by Car. It's a random clip from it, and then it gets a little weird. How weird, you ask? Well, let's see.
Hey, yeah, who are you? I saw you chasing Bart's ambulance.
Hutz is the name, Mr. Simpson. Lionel Hutz, attorney at law. Here's my card. It turns into a sponge when you put it in water.
Ooh, classy.
I'd like to talk to you about bringing legal action against the fiend who did this to your boy.
Oh, well, the fiend who did this to my boy is my boss, and besides, the doctor says it's just a bump on the head and a broken toe, nothing serious.
Doctors. Doctors are idiots. There's no telling what kind of permanent injuries he might have. You might have to wait on him hand and foot for the rest of his natural life. That's the downside. Now here's the good part. You can ching, 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 cash. You're right. When you feel up to it, come over to my office and we'll talk about it. Lionel Hutz, attorney at law. What's that, a broken neck? Great!
Hello, Dr. Hibbert.
Hello, Lisa. Well, we've got a nasty bump on our head, haven't we?
Now, if you'll notice, it did randomly jump into a Spanish ad for, and I feel like that Kane's trolling me at this point, cough syrup, because of all the coughing that I've been pointing out. The weird part about that is that episode was aired in 1991, and then for that 18-second gap of static into that commercial didn't air until 2002. So there is more time travel there, more like time traveling, like where the more they mess with things, the thinner the veil seems to get. Now, 18 seconds is about the time length. It's consistent with how long that test was for third test. So it could possibly be where the test from third test created this distortion, and then this distortion seemed to pick up TV waves in the future, almost a full decade in the future. Again, these are just like theories, but theories are kind of all we kind of gotta play on. Two episodes I haven't covered is one called Prototype and another where a car no-clips through reality. In Prototype, a camera focuses on the outside and then zooms in towards a sealed-in room. Inside this room, an 8-armed metallic device surrounds a small metallic ball. These 8 devices, likely being electromagnetic field generators, cuts to a screen and text about a test being conducted on May 10th, 1982 at a Oak Ridge National Laboratory under the supervision of Philip R. Heyman. The machine starts and a small device at the bottom of it starts to spin. The 8 machines fire and a bright spark surrounds the metal ball. The bright light dissipates and the spinning on the right stops. The ball is gone. It has been teleported into the complex. The footage then cuts to black. The first test of the low proximity magnetic distortion system appears to be a success. And lastly, we have this footage of a car no-clipping into the complex. The Backrooms have captured the imaginations of millions of people. And the amount of effort and love and care that Kane puts into these is definitely very visible in every single drop, every single pixel, and every single second of this series. From the VFX, the editing, and even the sound has done an amazing job at immersing you into these environments. Now, while the series is far from over, there's still an ongoing universe with this. Even pictured currently, we can see that it looks more like it is a live action. That's because Kane has, in some instances, taken a leap into live action. And unlike some instances, some series that go from digital to this, it seems to blend very well. And even talking about live action in the Backrooms, as of recording this, it is set that the Studio A24 should be releasing a Backrooms feature-length film here sometime in early 2024. I also highly recommend his other works as well. I can't recommend The Oldest View enough. But Kane took an already great concept and turned it into this massive undertaking. And the thing that blows my mind even more is the fact that when Kane originally did the Backrooms, the one that aired back in found footage, he was only 16 at the time. I can barely work Discord, and this kid is using Blender to such a masterful degree that until I saw him in an interview, like his parents, I also thought that these were real properties that he was using. The Backrooms are a love letter to liminal horror, which is evident in all the layering, all the foreshadowing. Almost nothing in the series is put in without a purpose. I, for one, can't wait to see where this series goes. I know with the A24 film, if it's in theaters, believe me, I'm going to be in there fistfighting anyone who gets in my way. And that about wraps up everything for the Kane Pixels Backrooms. There's still a little bit more. There's still a found footage 2, which I highly recommend. And in found footage 2, there's also an unlisted video. Most likely what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be covering those in a separate video, in which we'll go over like the small minor minutiae, along with a couple other items. Now, I still highly recommend that you go watch found footage 2, as it personally feels like Kane took it as kind of like how far he's come now compared to what found footage 1 was. Found footage 2 is so much better done than found footage 1 was, and found footage 1 was beautiful. Like, there was so much going on. The atmosphere, everything just hit so hard. Now, like I said, found footage 2 is a lot of the same, but Kane shows off a lot more in this one. He shows off how much he's grown as a creator, how skillful he's gotten with Blender and his VFX work, and we basically get to see an evolution through this. So while it's not totally canon, or at least relevant to the current canon, it's still a spectacle, and I highly recommend watching it. A couple quick theories I want to touch on before closing the video is with the bacteria that's definitely prevalent that we saw in Nicholas's corpse. They did state that it was a basilicus bacteria, and that is a spore that can lead to coughs if inhaled. So that is probably, since that is definitely how Nicholas died. Well, we don't know how Nicholas died. He died of malnutrition, but with the spores present, it's almost like the second they walk in, they start breathing in those spores. So with the other researchers coughing, I feel like, and when they were exposed to the creature, the silly string creature, the entity, the life form, or as you will, it ended up creating, like, their coughs would get worse and worse, which leads me to an additional theory. Now, an additional theory I have when it comes to the life forms and entities is that they were most likely at one point human, like Nicholas. We found Nicholas in various states of decay, and we did see a lot of that basilicus. And one theory I also want to pose too is that is one of the reasons why the creatures can sound like garbled human messes. An additional theory too with that one is the creature found in found footage only speaks in garbled patterns because maybe it only came into contact with like a toddler or an infant, so its speech pattern is more garbled, similar to how a child's would be, while the creature that Marvin ran into, that one is a little different because maybe its last the last thing that it ran into was a person, like a teen or an adult, because it was giving actual speech patterns. It was screaming for help. It was saying like, hey, is anyone down here? It was giving full sentences. So that is a possibility. Again, these are just theories. I do have quite a few other theories and a couple other things I want to touch on, but this video is already quite long, so I think in the future, the near future, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post another video. I'm going to post a sort of like part 2, more like a part 1.5, where I'm going to, on my whiteboard boards over there, I'm going to be doing a timeline and a breakdown of events. But in conclusion, what I really just want to say too is I would last 2 minutes there tops. I would definitely die. I also want to thank all you guys if you stuck around here. It really does mean a lot to me. The fact that we got to 30 subs like in a week blows my mind. Again, I'm doing this as a kind of like a hobby thing, but you guys doing that really warms my heart. But future of the channel is we're going to try to do a couple of these every now and then. I kind of want to do like one of these, like at least these forced research ones once a month. They're not always going to be stuff that I want to do. If you guys just want to mention them in the comments, I'll create a poll later on and we'll pick the ones that get the most votes. So hypothetically, what we could have had, we almost had Mothman. Mothman and Backrooms were actually dead even on Twitter, but then we went with what I was suggested on my personal socials with family and friends. Backrooms won by a landslide. But I also am going to be posting stuff that I want to do as well. We're going to be doing every Friday, including this Friday, we're going to be doing a drop. We're going to be doing creepypasta narrations, a couple things like that, just because they're fun. I have NES Godzilla dropping this Friday, so that's something to look forward to. But finishing this video is honestly kind of surreal to me. Like I said, like I never saw myself doing something like this, and then I don't know, I just got a random hair at my butt, and I'm like, let's do this. So, but I do want to say thank you guys for coming. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you want me to cover in the future. If you want to hear me do like random rants, that's cool. I do have a lot of rants stuck up in the brain that are ready to go at any moment's notice. I do want to say thank you though. It really means a lot to me if you've stuck around here and if you're going to stick around. So please like and subscribe, and until next time, cheers.